So Susan, I'm not going to take any more time away from you. Why don't you go ahead and get us started?
Okay, great. Thanks for the introduction, Stephen. Hello, everyone, and welcome to today's webinar. I'm calling from rather cool Central Ohio today. I'm really surprised at how cool it is today. But I want you to know, as Stephen just mentioned, we are going to have the opportunity to ask questions, and you can also tweet your questions or comments as we go along today if you'd like. You can find me at Susan Black, CFRE. And to get us started, I'd just like to see who is on the line today. So I have a couple of questions here, and I'd love for you to take a look and just post your responses in the chat box. And if you, for instance, the first question, how many participants serve in a leadership or governance position for their organization? How many of you are full-time fundraising staff? And how many of you are new? So if you want to just say leader, new, or full-time fundraising, experienced, something like that, that would be great. So just kind of go ahead, and I'm seeing some wonderful information come through on the chat right now. Looks like we've got some leaders and some full-time fundraising staff. A few experienced. We got some really experienced and some brand new. Awesome. Keep those coming. That's great. Somebody's left fundraising and come back. Welcome back. We're glad you're here. Okay. Well, it looks like we have quite a bit of a group there that all different kinds of folks coming. Still getting some more information in here. Lots of leaders. I'm glad to see that. Okay, there's going to be some great information for you leaders as you go along the way. Okay, that helps give me a little bit better idea of who's on the line today. I appreciate that. Okay. So today's lessons are taken from my book, which came out in January. So if you have a copy, be sure to keep that handy. But if you don't, that's quite all right. We'll take time at the end of our time today to talk about how you can get the most from the book in addition to what you'll learn today. But first, let me say that, like the book, today's training is intended for people who find themselves at the crossroads of leadership and fundraising. People who know that their organization can't move forward on critical issues like fulfilling mission, expanding programs, or even improving staff morale or attracting high-quality employees until the fundraising problems are addressed. These are people who don't have time for long classes and can't afford expensive consultants, and who know they don't have cookie-cutter problems that can be solved with one-size-fits-all fundraising systems. How this thing called fundraising really works and how they can get their arms around it today. So if this sounds like you, then you're in the right place. Let's take a look at the objectives for today's training. As a result of the training today, you are going to learn the 4 building blocks of fundraising success. You're going to assess your organization's strengths and weaknesses as it pertains to the building blocks. You're going to create a list of areas that need to be addressed immediately to improve your fundraising outcomes and discover key ideas for implementing those. So let's get started. I wrote my book because I met so many executive directors, new development directors, and most importantly, board members who saw other organizations raising lots of money, but they had absolutely no idea how that was being done. They wanted to help. They knew they were supposed to be doing something, but they didn't know where to begin. Moreover, they were afraid of fundraising, fearing that they would be required to ask for million-dollar gifts from wealthy individuals they didn't know and with no training. In other words, they didn't really know what is necessary to build and sustain a successful fundraising program. I've broken down the key elements into what I call the building blocks of fundraising success. And just like the stack you see in the picture, if one of the building blocks is removed, the whole stack can fall down. Let's take a look at our first building block. The first building block is called organizational readiness. Organizational readiness is the foundation of fundraising success, like the foundation of a house. Just like a house with a cracked foundation won't stand for long, a nonprofit with critical deficits in the area of organizational readiness will find it very challenging to be successful over the long term. Organizational readiness includes financial stability, board of directors capacity and preparedness, capability and connectedness of the CEO, development staff capability, and backroom operations. In the interest of time, and because full details for each of these components can be found in my book, I'm going to talk about each of them very briefly and then focus our attention on one specifically. Now, this set of factors could be its own webinar, and in fact, I do have one that focuses on those issues. But let's get down to the nitty-gritty. The first item is financial stability. Essentially, this simply means that people do not want to give to an organization that is struggling financially. They don't want to put more water into a leaky bucket. And that may require you to make some tough decisions in order to right-size your organization before you ever go out and ask for money. Now, I realize that may be hard because some of you might need that money right away to get started, and that's really a whole other issue entirely. But if you don't have a strong organization financially, if the business side of your organization is not running well, it's definitely going to affect your fundraising. The second thing is board capacity and preparedness. You definitely want to have as diverse, passionate, articulate, generous, and big picture group of people as you possibly can. That can be very challenging, and in fact, we're going to talk some more about that in just a moment. I also want to talk about the CEO's capability and connectedness. The CEO is the face of your organization, and he or she must understand his or her role as the face of the organization, and really also as the chief fundraiser, the one who is going to be out there really making the connections. But that person has to be out of the office. They have to be looking outward and not so bogged down on day-to-day details that they can't get out and really do the networking that's necessary to make a difference for fundraising. In fact, we're hoping that your CEO is spending 40% of his or her time in the community, that he or she belongs to a civic or fraternal club, that they sit on committees that are relevant to the mission of the organization, and that he or she is a recognized leader in the community. Those are just a few things that we're really going to focus on for your CEO to make a difference in fundraising. The next thing is development staff capability. Your development staff needs to be both trained and passionate. You would never hire someone to do a job that didn't know what they were doing. But so often in fundraising and development across the country, we find that folks are being hired to do development and fundraising who actually have no experience or who have never had formal training of any kind. If you're in that situation, please make sure that you have professional development for your staff on a yearly basis and that they're really getting what they need to understand their job and to do it well. The last thing is backroom operations. And that's policies and procedures for thanking donors, keeping up your data, upholding ethical standards, and of course, a good database program like Bloomerang, and those are all key to fundraising success. Okay, so I promised that we would focus our attention on one of these components specifically, and I'm guessing that of all those readiness issues we just talked about, the one that plagues your organization the most is your board. What you see here is a comparison of performing and non-performing boards, as well as some suggestions for how you can overcome some of these problems. Let's take a look at these just quickly. So you may have a group of well-meaning do-nothings with almost no connection. Instead, you really would hope to have people of influence and affluence. What you need to do is to create a board governance committee, create a trustee prospect list, and begin replacing members slowly as seats become open. It also helps to identify a champion and a leader to attract new blood. The second thing that you might have in your situation is that you have a non-performing board that is all one race, gender, sexual orientation, age, religion, or political persuasion with no consumers. We're working towards getting something that is more diverse with at least consumer. In order to do that, you need to complete a board matrix and have a governance committee then target prospects that have the attributes that the board matrix identifies. All right, the next step is not sure exactly what the organization does or how it helps the community and can't explain it to others. So if you have a board that is in that situation, you really want to try to get them to become ambassadors capable of articulating the mission and vision to the community. The way that you do that is to provide the correct language and helpful collaterals, train members on programs at each meeting, and require volunteering in your programs. The next one is organizations that have boards which are bogged down in day-to-day operations with long, tedious meetings. We really want to move them to a group that is steering the ship, focusing on big picture issues, and has shorter meetings, 60 to 90-minute meetings, hopefully using a consent agenda. If you want to do that, you need to conduct some board training to help your board understand its role. Use a consent agenda, which is essentially an overview of the meeting that's sent out ahead of time, and then you vote on that agenda as a block and then ask questions about it, rather than going into detail on each of the agenda items. Using committee meetings between full board meetings to complete action items is a great way to shorten those full board meetings as well. The last item is not giving personally or asking others to give and they don't feel like they know how. A key problem for lots of organizations. We want to try to move your board towards embracing their fundraising role. The best thing you can do is to conduct board fundraising training and empower development staff to guide or prod your board members. Okay, hopefully that's given you some tips that will help you with some of the issues that may be affecting your board. Okay, now what I want you to do is to take a moment and assess where your organization stands on organizational readiness. I'd like for you to look at each statement and give yourself a score based on your first reaction to this statement. A 3 is a yes, absolutely. A 2 is a sort of. A 1 is not so much. And a 0 is rain on, sister. So take just a moment and jot down your rating on yourself for each of these statements. And be sure to keep track of your scores as we go along because we'll be adding to those. Go ahead and do that now. Okay, hopefully you've had a chance to put your ratings for each of those. And as I said, make sure that you're keeping track of that somewhere so that we can take a look at that in its entirety later. Okay, let's move on to our second building block, which is fundraising goals and plans. In order to have successful fundraising, you need 3 things as it pertains to fundraising goals and plans, and that's a strategic plan, an annual fundraising plan, and a case for support. Let's look more closely at each of these. A strategic plan is a guide, it's a map for your organization. And really, if you have no plan, you're like a ship without a rudder. If you don't know if you have a strategic plan, that means you probably need to do one. And if you haven't updated it in the last 3 years, it probably means it's time to update it. So if you aren't in the middle of a strategic plan right now, then you ought to be thinking about your next strategic plan. And it's so important because your annual fundraising plan should come out of your strategic plan. The annual fundraising plan includes all your primary fundraising vehicles. It should involve the CEO. So when you're making your fundraising plan, you should involve your CEO in that process. And it should be reviewed and updated annually. And finally, you need a case for support. Now, a case for support is a document of documents. I'm going to talk a little bit more about what I mean by that in just a moment. But really what the case for support does is it helps make sure that everyone is singing from the same sheet of music. I want to just stop and give special attention right now to the case for support. Here's a quick overview of what should go into a case. As I just mentioned a moment ago, the case for support is a document of documents. It actually is a collection of all the things that a funder would need to know to make an informed decision about giving to your organization. So you're going to want to make sure that you have collected all your basic organizational information, your logic model elements, which is actually your goals and objectives, your measurable outcomes and evaluation measures, etc. And then you need to have a needs statement, financial information, and leadership information. The need statement is really like an essay. It's an argument for why your organization is doing the work that it's doing, how it's doing it, and why it's uniquely qualified to do so. You're going to want to put all the statistics and information in it that will help you really get your argument across. You know, the thing that's so important about a case for support is that it really serves as a jumping off point for so many other things. You can use it for grant writing. You can use it for creating your web page, brochures, speeches about your organization, marketing materials. It just really helps everyone get on the same page. And the other thing that I love about the case is that it also gives your Board of Trustees the words they need to truly be able to articulate the mission of your organization, why it's important, and the information that the information that's so crucial for people to understand. So a case for support is just so important. I really love the case for support. It's a big part of the work that I do with my clients. And I'll tell you something else that's really fascinating to me about working with my clients and creating case for support. It is that for many of them, it becomes a catalyst for major change within the organization. It actually allows folks to say to themselves, hey, the mission that we have is not stated correctly. The programs that we're doing may not be the programs that we ought to be doing because we can't show any impact. We can't measure anything about the change that we're making. And it's not a compelling statement of need. So the case for support is that foundational document that's going to help you so much in all of your fundraising. And I can't emphasize enough how important the case for support truly is. Okay, we're going to do another assessment now. I want you to take a look at these statements and again, see how you did on fundraising goals and plans. Just to remind you, 3 is a yes, absolutely, 2 is a sort of, 1, not so much, and 0, dream on. So take just a moment to complete your score. And remember that a 3 is the highest score, and make sure that you're tracking that for later use. Go ahead and do that now. Okay, since that's a little bit shorter, and I'm guessing that those are pretty easy yes or no questions, we're going to go ahead and move on to our next building block. Oh, no, we're not. We're going to stop, and we're going to ask for questions. If you do have a question, feel free to go ahead and put that in the chat box. I haven't seen any questions so far. I think we've just had our responses to our initial questions about your being a leader and so forth. I see someone is typing right now. Maybe he gave up. We're going to hope that there's a question. I'll give you a chance to get those in. Stephen, are you seeing these? I'm seeing that folks are typing, but then I'm not seeing the actual question. Okay. Stephen's seeing no questions yet, but I still see people typing, so I'm going to wait just a moment. Okay, Becca, she's saying that she's seeing lots of zeros so far. Don't fret, we are going to get to that at the end. Hang on. I know for some of you, you may be seeing lots of zeros. That just means you know exactly what you need to do. You'll have your work cut out for you. We're going to talk about all of that in the end, so hang on. Absolutely, yes. Trent's saying, won't some organizations have different CEO levels of involvement in fundraising? Some that have more professional fundraising staff, maybe less. I think the key thing you want to focus on here, Trent, is that really the CEO needs to, no matter how professional or their fundraising staff is, no matter how many staff they have in fundraising, the CEO needs to see himself or herself as the ultimate chief fundraiser for the organization, and that's really the key there. Now, I think what will change, or what could be different, is how much they need to, maybe oversee the fundraising process itself, and so in terms of involvement in that way, I think that is true. You might have you might have staff that is able to just guide their CEO, tell him or her what to do, and they go and do it, and that's fine. Then you might also have a CEO that is really very hands-on with the development director, figuring out what to do and going on all of those calls, or really has a hands-on approach to the work. So in that regard, yes, you would have some differing involvement in fundraising. But no matter what, that CEO needs to make sure that he or she sees themselves as the chief fundraiser and ultimately responsible. How do you get board members more involved? Oh, Joanna, we could just do a whole webinar on that, couldn't we? That's a really difficult thing. I'm going to throw out a couple of ideas to you, and then we're going to move on. The main thing that you need to do to get board members involved is help them be engaged. You need to tap into their passions, understand exactly what it is that makes them want to be on the board, and then figure out a way to truly connect their passion with what you're doing. And there's lots of suggestions for how you could do that. But that would be the main thing that I would say to you. The other thing is people want to see others like themselves on the board, so who you have on the board is important. And then if they're engaged, that's going to help. And then if they are seeing the results, if they're really involved, I love those organizations that have a volunteer requirement for their board members. They have to go. I'm going to pick on my friend Amy here, who's at Stray Rescue in St. Louis. I don't know if her board members have a volunteer requirement, but they have a wonderful opportunity to go and work in with the dogs, and that is a great way for people to get involved, to really get their hands dirty. So those are just a couple of ideas I'm going to throw out to you, Joanna, at this point, and maybe we'll have time later to go over that some more. Okay, I am going to move us on now to our third building block, which is primary fundraising vehicles. These include the 4 items that you see listed here. And just to touch on these briefly, so that everybody understands what we're talking about. Annual gifts are gifts given each year, usually by individuals, and they comprise the largest amount of gifts given in the United States every year. Annual giving includes special events, which I assume that you are all familiar with, probably some of you more than you even wanted to be. And the second is foundation and corporate gifts. Now, these are the ones that your board thinks you should focus on, but which really represent a much smaller piece of the pie and overall funding pie than individuals do. The third is major gifts, which we're going to talk more about in a moment. And I know we have a major gift person on the line, so I'm excited to have him there. I believe that was a gentleman who was our major gift officer. And planned gifts are bequests, trusts, and the like, which are set up during a person's lifetime and then benefit the organization after the person's death. So that's just a quick overview. Let's take a closer look. Now, your annual gifts, you're probably already doing them. Those are things like your annual solicitation letters, your phone-a-thon, your special events, anything like that. That's where folks are giving those annual gifts. Remember that retention is the key. It costs a lot more to get a new donor than it does to keep an old one. So really focus your attention on annual gifts with retention, with keeping the ones that you have. And then the next section is corporation and foundation gifts. Make sure that when you are looking for grants, that you research those that are tied to your mission. Don't have a shotgun approach. Don't just send something out to everyone. Really make sure that it's worth your time and theirs for you to be applying. It's really important that you make sure that that mission is connected. And the other thing that you can do with corporation and foundation giving is use your board contacts. We had that question a minute ago about how do I get board members more involved? Have them go to their companies. There's more than one way for them to involve their corporations and their employers in giving to your organization. Make sure that you're using your board contacts. The Major gifts is an area that is so important to an organization, and especially what you're going to want to do with major gifts is to closely tie that gift to the donor's passion, to tie the ask to the donor's passion. You're not going to get that gift if the passion is not there. And remember that major gifts involve multiple decision makers. It's never going to be just a quick, easy gift. In fact, that's one of the main differences between a major gift and an annual gift. I want to stop right there, though, and tell you just a little bit more information about major gifts. Now, many years ago, I had a question about what was the difference between annual gifts or large annual gifts and major gifts. And I asked one of the grandfathers of major giving, Kent Dove, what he thought. And his answer was this. He said to remember that major gifts are gifts given over time for a special purpose, and usually from a person's assets, not their income. I'm going to say that one more time. They're given from assets, not income, over time and for a special purpose. And so if you have larger donors, let's say for your organization, $1,000 is a large gift, and you're receiving that from someone on an annual basis. That's still an annual gift because it's a much easier choice for them to make, and because they're giving it on an annual basis. A major gift would be for probably a special project that really ties to that donor's passion. It's going to involve maybe their financial planners, their family, things like that. So you want to make sure that you understand what major gifts are and how to solicit them before you go out and do that. Then the last section is planned gifts. My suggestion to you with planned gifts is to do what you can whenever you can. If you don't have planned giving staff, that's okay. You can always talk about remembering the organization in your will and things like that, offering people opportunities to learn more about planned giving. But do what you can whenever you can with planned gifts is my advice for those who maybe don't have that as part of their set of vehicles right now. Okay. Here's some insider tips on the major vehicles. First one, focus on women donors. There's a new study that just came out that says that women donors are increasingly making decisions about giving, and when they give more. Yay, women donors. So don't neglect the women donors. Don't just assume that the gentleman in a couple is going to be the one that's making a decision. Often the women have an equal say in that, or they may be the ones who really are making the gifts. So make sure that you're focusing on them. Thank for every gift. Some organizations get into a bad habit of deciding that people under a certain amount of money shouldn't receive a thank you, or they're just receiving their IRS letter. Make sure that everyone feels special. I can't tell you how many organizations out there have gotten a $25 gift or a $10 gift even from someone their whole life, and then that person left them a large bequest because the organization had a relationship with them. So don't neglect small donors. Special events are a necessary evil. My suggestion to you is that you get them down to 2. Try to have no more than 2 events a year. They are a huge time suck. They're extremely labor intensive. They are necessary, however, and what they're good for is getting your name out and getting folks to understand your mission, and also having an opportunity to attract new donors. So that acquisition element of your annual giving is an important part of special events. But that means that you have to make sure that on your special events that you actually are talking about what you do, and you are actually educating people about the mission of your organization. If a person comes to your event and they can't even tell you who was sponsoring the event or who the event benefited, then you've lost an opportunity. We just talked a moment ago about don't use a shotgun approach to grant writing. That's a waste of your time and theirs. And don't overlook middle-aged donors for planned gifts. Sometimes people think that the only people they should be talking to in planned giving are older folks. That is not true. It's the middle-aged folks who are making their wills. So don't overlook your middle-aged donors when you are working on planned giving. Those are just a few little insider tips. And we are at our assessment again. We're going to take just a moment to take a look at this assessment. And again, you've got your information there about what 3, 2, 1 means. So just take a moment and rate yourself. Again, add it to your list that you already have going. Just take a moment to do that now. Okay, that's a quick one too, so I'm hoping that you've had a chance to finish that. Okay, we're going to move on to our last building block, which is communications. Communications and fundraising really go hand in hand, and there's some key elements to your communications that you need to be aware of. First is that you need a well-crafted message. Second is you need a communication plan. And third, you need effective communication vehicles. So let's take a little bit more time on each of these. Okay, first of all, communications and community relations start with a message. If no one understands what you do or why it matters, they won't give. I should put that in bold and put big flashing lights around it. This is so crucial. So many of the organizations that I work with, and I focus on organizations that have little to no fundraising staff or experience, and many of these organizations are saying, no, we don't understand why no one is giving to us. It's because you don't have a well-crafted message. People don't understand what you do or why it matters. And you have to really get that across in as many ways as possible. If you don't, they won't give. So it's really important that you start with that. We're going to talk a little bit more about the well-crafted message in just a moment. A second key aspect of this is a communication plan. The best thing that you can do is to create a calendar of communication that you're going to have with your donors, with your friends, with your volunteers, with anybody who's in that inner circle who is connected to your organization. Create a calendar for the types of things that they're going to receive on a regular basis so that they're never going past, say, a quarter without receiving something from you. And you can use your fundraising goals as the driver. You can make sure, okay, if we're going to have a solicitation at a certain time of year, we want to make sure that we've built up to that with lots of information about the great work that we're doing in our newsletter or our e-blast, or our e-newsletter, or our Twitter feed, or our Facebook pages. We're going to make sure that we are really talking about what we're doing so that when that solicitation comes, folks are ready to give. So that's an important aspect. The third one is effective communication vehicles, which is really what we just talked about. You want to tailor those vehicles to your donors and their interests using multiple touch points. You want to really take a look at who is looking at your website, who is on your Twitter feed, who's on your Facebook page, who is responding to the mailings, who is responding to things that you're putting in your newsletter or your e-blasts. And make sure that you are tailoring communications to what your folks are interested in, and do that in as many ways as possible. I also want to mention, consider your time and capability. If you don't have the time to keep up a Twitter feed, don't have one. If you don't have the time to keep up a Facebook page, don't have one. Use other things to help you get your word out, things that are going to be that you're going to be capable of doing with the staff that you have, the resources that you have, the volunteers that you have, the budget that you have. And that's really, really important. I'm just going to make sure that I've covered everything here by looking at my notes, so hang on just 1 minute. Okay. I think I've covered everything, so I want to spend some special time on crafting your key messages. A well-crafted message is clear, concise, and compelling. I can't emphasize that enough. I've just been working with 2 different organizations that have issues around their mission, their vision, their value statement, and all of those types of things that we use on a regular basis. I would suggest that you take a look at each of those things for your organization and use what the Rotary Club would call a three-pronged test. Now, I'm a Kiwanian, so I don't use the three-pronged test except in this area, but yay Rotary. Three-pronged test. Is your message clear? Is it concise? If your mission statement is a paragraph long, if your program descriptions or your value statements are very convoluted, if you're using any kind of lingo or anything like that, technical speak, that is not concise. You need to make sure that it is clear and it is concise. And the last thing, is it compelling? I have an organization I'm working with right now who basically had a mission statement that just stated what they did. A mission statement that states what you do is not a mission statement. You want that mission statement to be just broad enough to be inspiring and just narrow enough to be something you're actually able to measure. So just like your goal. So a mission statement should be inspiring. And if your mission statement is not inspiring, take another look. Really talk about the heart of the matter. What is it you're trying to achieve in the world? It's so important because it's so closely tied to fundraising. If your messages are not clear, concise, and compelling, it may be the reason your fundraising is not doing as well as it could. Okay. We're doing really well on time, so I'm going to actually stop and answer a question that was on the feed here, and then I'm going to be giving you an opportunity to ask some additional questions in a moment. So be thinking of those, and you can go ahead and start sending them in. Trent is asking, what are some realistic ways to thank for every gift beyond a simple regular tax letter? Are you recommending a basic, automatically generated thank you letter? Yes, really that is what I'm doing, Trent. I'm basically saying to make sure that everyone who gives to you is receiving something in the way of a thank you. There's some organizations who try to cut corners on that, and I think that it's unwise. I think it's best to really do something, even if it's something very basic, as you're saying, and it's automatically generated, definitely. You just want to make sure that you are doing something for everyone. Okay, so let's take a look at assessing our communications. Here you have 3 statements, and you're going to respond once again as you've been doing before. So I'm going to give you just a moment to go ahead and do that. And again, 3 is yes, 2 is sort of, 1 not so much, 0 dream on. So go ahead and take a look at those statements and rate yourself on those. Okay, hopefully you've had a chance to read those over and to go ahead and rate yourself on those. And so what I'm going to do now is we're going to take a look at how you did. And I'm going to ask you to go back and look at all of the ratings that you've given yourself and to add them all up. So you're just going to, just simple addition, just add them up. And we're going to ask you to let me know how you did. Using the chat box once again, go ahead and tell me, what area you fell into here. If it was a 20 or 50, whatever it is, what area you fell into. And I'm going to try to keep track here. I'm seeing mostly in the 20 to 40 range, which is kind of a broad range, I realize. I'm just keeping track while you all are sending yours in, so just keep on doing that. That's fine. Oh, Becca, don't worry. It's going to be okay. Lots of 30s, 33s. Since a lot of people had the sort of as an answer, and then not so much. That's okay. That's why we're doing this. That's why I do what I do. Okay. I feel like I have a pretty good sense of that right now. So you know what? No, I don't think anybody got above 50 points, so I am just going to not even bother talking about that. And we had a few people, maybe one or two, in that 40 to 50 score level. So what that means is that you have a good start in fundraising, good for you, and you're likely doing a lot of things right, but you may need to strengthen your overall fundraising program. So I would identify the areas you gave yourself the lowest score on and seek additional information to help you, your staff, and your development committee of your board address those. So you're doing really well. Good for you. Okay, let's really focus on our folks that are in that 20 to 40 point score. And basically what this means is that you, your CEO, if that's not you, and your board have some work to do, and possibly a lot of work to do, but don't panic. Now you know what the ideal is, and you can work on the problem areas. You can use the assessment to show your CEO or your board here or your development person where you could make improvements. In fact, I actually use the building blocks often when I am training boards of trustees. And what I do with that is, and I believe that you all are going to get this information later. You're going to get this recording. So if you make a PowerPoint similar to this one and you show your board or you show your development committee and you say, hey, I had this training, she showed us that there are 4 building blocks, these are the areas, these are the definitions, and this is where I ranked us, this is where we are right now. These are some of the deficits that we have. It's a fantastic teaching tool for your board because it does 2 things. First of all, it shows them what professional fundraising looks like, in case they aren't really sure, because I would bet dollars to donuts that your board, many of your board members don't really have any idea how professional fundraising is done. They just know they need to raise money or they're supposed to be raising money. So this is a great teaching tool, is to really use what you've learned today in a presentation to the board and compare it to where you stand, because my guess is that your board members are going to be able to identify some areas where they might be able to help you. Again, going back to that question we had earlier about how to engage board members, if you can identify, ask them to write down on a note card or a piece of paper what a building block they saw themselves maybe helping with more. That could be a great way to help engage your board members. So use it as a teaching tool. Use it as a way for you to create that hot list. Okay, we know that our CEO needs to be out in the community more. We know that we need to have a case for support. We know that we need to take a look at our messaging. Whatever those things are, these are foundational things that are really going to help you really get your fundraising program off the ground and allow it to be sustainable over time. And so this is a great way for you to get started. I just encourage you to go back, take a look at these assessments that you've done today, and identify those things that you can get started on. And we have Becca, I'm going to pick on you. I'm so sorry. But I'm so proud of you for being on this today and for going through this and for telling me how you did, because you know that you have some pretty serious fundraising deficits going on in your organization. You probably knew that before you got on the call today. But hopefully this training has helped you take a hard look at what is missing from your organization's fundraising program, and will give you the courage to tackle the problems, because now you know what the goal is. Now you know what the benchmark is, what you can be working towards. And I would certainly encourage you to use the book as a guide and to seek some more information on each of those things. So let's take just a moment of your time before we talk about the questions that you have. And hope all of you have questions that are going to pop up in my chat box, because I'm really excited to answer those for you. But I want to give you some insider tips for using the book. Okay, so great. If you don't, that's fine, but this is really helpful to you. If you are the CEO, I'm going to suggest you read chapter 1 and then skip to chapter 6. And then complete the full assessment at the end. So that is something that you can do. For those of you who are out there who are the development staff, buy the book for your CEO, give it to them, and tell them to do this. That would be a great way to do it. If you're new to fundraising or you are in a one-person shop, start with chapter 7. That gives you the 10-step process for starting a fundraising program in your organization. And if you do that, It will help you get moving quickly and really help you do, focus specifically on what you need to be doing, and if you feel like you're floundering a little bit. If you're a board member, read the whole thing. I don't know that we have any board members on the call today. You know what? This is a great, again, a great teaching tool for a development committee. I've had clients bought a copy for everybody on the development committee, and they work through the book together, because the book is actually a workbook. And so it has all kinds of worksheets in there that help you work through a lot of the things that we talked about today. So if you get that and you work through it with your development committee, again, great teaching tool. Regardless of who you are, complete the assessment at the end, a lot of which you have just done, and and when you first read the book, and then do it again 6 months or a year later. And Kim, the name of the book is the same name as our subject today, which is Help, They Want Me to Fundraise. I am so sorry. Just had I had a phone ring. I apologize. Okay, so now we are ready for your questions, and I am happy to take those for you. So I am hoping to see those come up in my chat box.
So do take advantage of this time. We've got a CFRE here on the line ready to answer any questions of yours for the next 5 or 6 minutes or so. Just so everyone knows, I will be sending out.
Stephen, do you have anything that we've talked about today that you would be a standard question that folks might want to know more about?
Looks like some more coming in here. Looks like Trent is typing.
So I'm just going to wait. Stephen? Okay, Trent, you had a question. Do you have any general recommendations for percentages of vehicles, particularly successful organizations? Do you mean, can you give me a little bit more information on that, Trent? Can you explain that a little bit better? And that's as a percentage of the amount of money that you're trying to raise. You're asking how much of your total budget should be comprised of these? Yes, okay. Thank you. Dee, thank you. Giving USA has statistics. Very good, very good. Yes, I think, always we talk about how 80% of giving in the United States is given by individuals, and, the rest by corporations and foundations. And if you look closely at that, if you take out the funds that people have that are really just, their own money that they're giving, it's really even more. The individual giving is even higher. So my suggestion to you is that you take a look at the history of how your organization has raised money in the past and where the income has come from. And then when you're doing your research on corporations and foundations, really take a hard look at whether that makes sense for your organization to be doing that. I know some organizations are really good candidates for grants because of what they do and say their after-school program, or, like we say, children and puppies. I mean, if it's anything like that, you might fit more missions of foundations and corporations. So if you have a difficult mission, corporations and foundations may be a hard sell for you, and so you may really have to work on creating a constituency of individuals that are going to support your organization. So I'm not sure that I would recommend anything in particular as a global thing other than the 80-20 rule, because I think it's very specific to each organization and what your historical giving has looked like, and what your mission is and how it fits into the missions of other giving and other funders. So that would be my response to that. Okay, Stephen was having some trouble unmuting a second ago.
Here, Susan, if you can
Oh, yay! Yay, I can hear you now. Anything that you can suggest that I maybe touch on further, Stephen, with our remaining time while others are thinking of additional questions?
Yeah, I think you answered a lot that came in. I would just encourage people to take advantage of the next 5 minutes or so. We've got Susan, who's a CFRE, here on the line. She'll answer any questions you may have in the remaining amount of time. And just while we're waiting on questions, I just want to say thanks to Susan again for sharing all this knowledge with us for a half hour or so. It was a good presentation, really good.
Thank you.
And so glad that all of you joined us again. Even though we had some trouble a couple weeks ago. So thank you to Susan and to all of you for listening along here. It looks like Brittany is typing something. Maybe she's trying to craft that question there.
That's okay. Sometimes it's hard to think of exactly what the question is that you want to ask.
Yeah. And while we're waiting, Susan, do you want to... Oh, there's Brittany's question there. Would you suggest soliciting funds through mail or network with individuals first? That's a pretty good question. What would you do there, Susan?
Well, again, I think it depends on the situation that you have. If you've never reached out to individuals before, then the first thing that you're going to have to do is create a constituency. You're going to have to create that list. Where is it going to come from? Who are the people who should care about your organization? Who are your board members' contacts or volunteers or others who are interested? And you're going to have to reach out to them in whatever way makes sense for that individual and given your organization's particular needs. Now, I think that it's a combination to really answer your question. Some people like to call first and then send things out. Some people like to do it in reverse. They're going to send out a mailing and then follow up with a phone call. I'm going to add, again, another great way to involve board members is to do a board phone-a-thon or a board thank-a-thon, either way. And that's a great way to follow up individuals in person. If you have a bigger list that you're trying to get through and you're not going to be able to go out and meet those people in person, face to face, I should say. So I think building that groundswell of support and giving folks information as well first, I think, is also really crucial. Making sure that they're really seeing the impact of what their gifts would do is really important before you begin asking. So make sure that folks, that you have the list, make sure they're being informed, that they're being engaged, and then go ahead and do that solicitation, whether it's through the mail, through email, through a face-to-face solicitation, or a phone-a-thon or something along those lines. But make sure, whatever you do, that you keep that communication going, you keep that relationship building, and you follow up with folks who are interested in your organization. So I think we're right up on the end of our time today, so I just want to thank you all for participating, and I hope that it's been helpful and useful for you today. You're welcome to contact me if you have any additional questions or if there's anything I can do to be of assistance to you. I'm just so glad to have been able to provide this information to you today, and I hope that it's been helpful. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Susan. It was really awesome, and thanks to everyone for listening in. Just so everyone knows, we do these webinars once a week. We have a really great one coming up actually this Thursday. We've got two this week since we rescheduled Susan. But on this Thursday at 1 p.m. Eastern, Mazarine Trays, who runs Wild Woman Fundraising, is going to be our guest. And she's going to talk about email newsletters. She's going to offer some tips for how to get maybe some higher open rates and some higher click-through rates on your email newsletter. So if that topic is of interest to you, do check out our webinar page. I just sent it in through the chat. You can register for that. There's also a ton of webinars there on the page. We've got a lot scheduled out actually through the end of the year. So you might peruse that and look for any topics that you may be interested in. And Susan, I just want to give you the last word and tell people where maybe they can find out a little bit more about you, maybe follow you on Twitter or send you an email. I know your contact info is there on the screen, but any further instructions for folks who want to get in touch with you after this webinar?